So, welcome everyone to the Relax and Grow BSWA Meditation Day. It's just one day, but even one day counts. It's wonderful that you have taken the time to come and join me today. And the topic for this meditation day is renunciation. It's one word that has always been very, very close to my heart and that I find very inspiring myself. So let's go for it. The power of renunciation. Often when people talk about renouncing in certain countries, they speak about becoming a monastic and becoming a monk or a nun. Yes, that is a big renunciation, but there are, of course, so many different layers of renunciation. So it's not just becoming a monk, it's also just letting go of a few things in the beginning. And once you start to really get going, then you will be inspired to let go more and more. Right, let me just switch off my camera here now so that won't be on the live stream for the people there. Good. Do we still have some background noise there? If you have if you are still unmuted, then I would please ask you to mute yourself because I heard a bit of sound there. I can always put my sound level down though. Let me do that. And then we should be fine. Okay, wonderful. So here are the slides. Okay, this picture is a picture that I chose for this topic, and you will actually see why it is this specific picture as we go along. Now, to define renunciation a little bit in the beginning here, and I would like to use the suttas to do that, and the suttas talk about 4 ways of letting go. If you are familiar with Ajahn Brahm's teachings, I'm sure you will also know those ones already, but they are from the suttas. So Chaga is the first one. Pati Nisaga is the second one. The third one is Muti, and the fourth one is Analaya. Very, very beautiful terms here. So the translations by Ajahn Sujato here are giving away, letting go, releasing, and not adhering. So let's look at them in a little bit more detail. So giving away, chaga, the word is connected to charity. So anytime we are charitable, anytime we are giving, we are always also giving a little part of ourselves. We are renouncing, and it is something very, very beautiful on the spiritual path to do. So we don't always have to give things of great value like money or gifts. We can also just give our time or our consideration to another person, which is chaga there as well, or just even giving this time to this evening or to this whole meditation course that we will be having together is beautiful there. Then the letting go part, the renouncing part, the getting rid of, or sometimes even throwing things away, but always with the understanding that we are actually unburdening ourselves in the process. So we are giving things away that actually burden us in some sense. Sometimes we don't really realize how many things we are carrying around with ourselves before we have put them down, sometimes temporarily, or before we have actually really let them go and thrown them away. Then we start to realize that we become more free. And that's the next word there. Muti or vimuti is freedom, is releasing, is emancipation. So it is very often used actually also with the word nibbana. So we are released, we are freed, we are vimutti. So it's a term that goes right to the core of the teachings there. And then the fourth one, which is sometimes a bit difficult to understand, not adhering. What does that mean? So Ajahn Brahm usually talks about this. It's like the Teflon mind. It's a mind that doesn't have things sticking to it. It's a mind that is like a lotus flower. So whatever is poured on that lotus flower, it touches it, but just on the surface, and then it rolls off. So there is no sticking, there is no grasping, there is no pushing away. So it's complete and perfect equanimity there. So these four terms are used in a very specific context in the suttas. So what are we giving up? What are we letting go? What are we releasing? And what are we not adhering to? So in this specific case, it's tanha, it's craving. So if we do these things properly, then it becomes the remainderless fading away and cessation of craving. So in Pali, tanhaya asesa viraga nirodho. Very wonderful words there. It's just two words really, as you can see on the screen, but there's so many different, it's a compound, and those two words that you see on the screen make up that whole almost sentence that you can see above there. And of course, most likely people who didn't know this have already seen now that this is the third noble truth. So the giving up, the cessation, the fading away of craving. And of course, this is from a very famous teaching. It's from the setting in motion, the wheel of the Dhamma, the Dhamma Chakkappawattana Sutta, which was the first sermon that the Buddha gave. Right, so already for me, just going through these things, very, very inspiring. But in the world, when you talk about renunciation, people very often are not inspired so quickly about this concept. And that's what is seen in another sutta very nicely here as well. And that is the sutta with Tapussa, the householder. It actually starts with the Buddha going into the forest and telling Venerable Ananda, that he will be back after his meditation, after his seclusion. And this is kind of the sutta that I will be using now as kind of a summary for this whole meditation day that we have together. And it goes like this. The householder Tapussa went up to the Venerable Ananda, that was the Buddha's attendant, bowed, sat down to one side, and said to him, Sir Ananda, we are lay people who enjoy worldly pleasures. Kama is the world of the five senses, and the bhogi is the person who is enjoying a pleasure and this worldly pleasure. We like worldly pleasures. We love them and take joy in them. But renunciation, which is the word nekama, seems like an abyss. So for some of you, that might be the case, depending on how far you want to go on this path. So in Pali, it says it's like a sheer cliff. Next, I have heard that in this teaching and training, there are very young mendicants, monks and nuns, whose minds are eager for renunciation. They're confident, settled, and decided about it. They see it as peaceful. Renunciation is therefore the dividing line between the multitude and the mendicants in this teaching and training. So you have some people who see it as a cliff, see it as an abyss, see it as something to maybe even be afraid of, but there's other people who really leap towards it and are confident, settled, and decided about it. Oops, sorry, I haven't figured that one out. So, householder, we should see the Buddha about this matter. Come, let's go to the Buddha, says Ananda there. instead of answering straight away. So they went, and then Ananda, together with Tapussa, went to the Buddha, bowed and sat down to one side, which is the courteous thing to do at that time. And then Ananda told the Buddha what had happened. After the Buddha listened to what was just said before, he said this: "That's so true, Ananda. That's so true. Before my awakening, when I was still unawakened, but intent on awakening, that is the Bodhisattva, I too thought renunciation is good, seclusion is good, but my mind wasn't eager for renunciation. It wasn't confident, settled and decided about it. It didn't see it as peaceful." So very wonderful to see here that the Buddha says, when I was a layperson, I had the understanding that renunciation, that nekama is good. I had the understanding that seclusion, paviveka in Pali, is good. But even so, I wasn't eager, I wasn't confident, I wasn't settled, I wasn't decided about it. And I didn't have the experience really of knowing that renunciation is peaceful. So the Buddha puts himself in our shoes, in everybody's shoes who are here as human beings on this planet, not denying that the worldly pleasures don't bring a certain pleasure with them, but saying, I just didn't know. So what did he do? So the Buddha said, then I thought, I haven't seen the drawbacks of worldly pleasures. And so I haven't cultivated that. I haven't realized the benefits of renunciation, the anisangsa. And so I haven't developed that. So even though we might have an understanding, even we might be inspired by the term renunciation, it takes a bit of work. We have to understand why the worldly pleasures that do pull us at times, why they are dangerous, why they have certain drawbacks. And we have to understand what the benefits are of this renunciation that we are intending to develop. Ajahn Brahmali was telling me during the Noble Eightfold Path that I'm shortening that word always, and I actually usually miss out an E them. So it's develop, if you want to say it in the right way. That's why my mind isn't eager for renunciation, not confident, settled, and decided about it. And it's why I don't see it as peaceful, the Buddha said there. So then he goes on to say, well, if I would now cultivate that understanding that worldly pleasures have drawbacks and develop the benefits of renunciation, then I could actually proceed. And so he did. And so after some time, I put that in yellow there. That is so important. So again, this is the Buddha talking here. This is our great teacher who has seen Nibbana, who has realized Nibbana, and who is teaching it. But he said, when I was a layperson, it took me some time to understand this. So please be patient about this whole process. It does take time. So after some times, he understood the drawbacks and he realized the benefits. Then his mind was eager, confident, settled, and decided. So the beautiful words that I will be going more into detail later: pakandati, pasidati, santitati, and vimuchati. See, there the word vimuti is in there again. And one of the most important parts here as well, he saw it as peaceful. He understood it as peaceful. He had the experience. And that's what I wish that everyone who is new to this practice can actually have their own experience of understanding what happens when we renounce, and to feel the peaceful power. It's a still peaceful, but still a very powerful power, but not a power like other powers that we know of in the world. So then when the Buddha saw those things, then he was ready to meditate deeply, and ready to meditate peacefully. So it's the same thing here. If we want to meditate in a deep and in a peaceful way, we have to make sure that we have the foundations for that in place. And that's what the Buddha was teaching in this sutta so beautifully. Understanding the drawbacks, that we'll go into a little bit more tomorrow morning, and also understanding the benefits. Right, so then the Buddha says, once he has understood this, once he has practiced this, while I was in meditation, perceptions and then the working and the movement of the mind, it's the word manisikara here, accompanied by worldly pleasures, would beset him, would arise in his mind. Sometimes he says would invade, but he just has to make sure that it doesn't remain. And he realized at that point, because he had an experience of something else, that this worldly pleasure was actually an affliction in that context. So suppose a happy person were to experience pain, that would be an affliction to them. So you are realizing that there are different levels of happiness in this world. And the happiness that we get from renunciation on all of its levels, right from the beginning, right to the end of the path, is very important to understand, because it is like stairs that are leading us from the place where we are gradually into the right direction. And it's one of those similes that Ajahn Brahm sometimes uses. He talks about foods. So there are so many different foods in this world, and they have different qualities to them. They have a certain happiness that comes with those foods. And once you become a connoisseur of foods, then you appreciate those foods and you have a comparison to other foods who are not as superior as those foods. And when it comes to be able to have a choice, the choice will become very clear that some of the things are better than the others are. And then you, of course, will be inclined to go for the better things and understand that the other things might be tasty maybe, but they have an aftertaste, they have drawbacks, they have problems that come with them, and then you can make an informed choice. But you have to have that buffet, so to speak, of those different foods. And the story that Ajahn Brahm often says is, if there is not a lot of food around, then you might be inclined to fight over food with the cat or the dog or whatever. I mean, cat food and dog food these days is pretty good compared to sometimes what it was in the past. But of course, if you have a buffet of beautiful food, you wouldn't fight with your pet over the food. So you have to have the spectrum, the understanding of everything there. In the same way, when perceptions and the working or the movement of the mind accompanied by worldly pleasures beset the Buddha in his meditation, then he realized that it was an affliction, that it was like a pain, that it was irritating, that there was something which is much more refined. Okay, so that is the Anguttara Nikaya 941. If any of you want to look up the whole sutta there, I'm just using the part that is relevant for what we are talking about here. Good. So we spoke about an abyss, and I found this nice picture here. So it is a bit scary if you come to a place like this one, where you have a sheer cliff and you're quite close to the edge of that cliff. And that's, I can understand, renunciation can sometimes feel like that. As I said, there is different levels, and the deeper you go, the more you give up. The more you give up of yourself, of who you think yourself to be, then it sometimes becomes scary as well. But just to get started here, I wish that we approach this abyss that we approach this dividing line together. So we're coming from the world, we're coming from the worldly pleasures. We have now decided to have a retreat day to cut these things off temporarily for a certain period of time and to see how it goes. So we leave those worldly pleasures as well as we can behind ourselves and come to this abyss. But just come to this dividing line so it still feels comfortable. And then once you come to a spot where you feel comfortable, you sit down, and we will do that in the meditation together afterwards. You calm down and you start to disconnect yourself from the world and from the five senses. So the five senses are the things that connect us with all these worldly things. But there is a world within that you can explore with meditation, and that we will together. So you just plonk yourself there gently, softly, and then you carry on sitting there. And what I hope that we can achieve in this day today, I don't know how deep your meditation might be going this time that we have together, that you can just sit in that spot comfortably and enjoy the view. Even though it is scary, even though it is at a high altitude, even though it might be a bit, you're unfamiliar with the terrain, you're unfamiliar with what is arising in meditation. Just have an open mind, have an open heart, and take in those beautiful sights and those beautiful feelings that do arise when we let renunciation, when we give it a go, and when we start to give it space and we start to have it grow. Good, so I would like to give you a little bit more meat on the bone now for the meditation that we're going to do together, and how we could go about this in day-to-day life, but also in our meditation. And in the suttas, there is this beautiful simile of the 6 animals here, the Chapana Kopama Sutta, and that is from the Samyutta Nikaya, sorry. And how is someone unrestrained? So unrestrained, asamvara, means now that our senses are pushing and pulling us into the world, into those worldly pleasures that we were talking about. Take a mendicant who sees a sight with their eye. So now I, so to speak, gets caught. Sometimes in the sutta they talk about it's like hooks that are out there, like the hooks that the fish bite into. And if these sense impressions come in and we're not careful, then we might bite into the hook. And biting in the hook means that if this sight, in this case, is pleasant, we start grasping it. We start to hold on to it. We start to try and get more of it. Or if it's unpleasant, then we start to dislike it. We start to push it away. So that's the 2 movements there. Those people who are unrestrained, they live with they live with, that's right, they live with mindfulness of the body unestablished, and their heart or their mind is restricted. So the words that are used here are parita chetaso. So cheta is the mind or the heart, sometimes also called mano or chitta. And parita means that something literally is small. It is restricted. It is limited. So we are not aware in the first place. We are not established in the present moment. We are not established in the body. And then our mind, our heart is negative or fault-finding or just closed and small. And that is when the problems start. And they don't truly understand the freedom of heart and the freedom by wisdom, which is Ceta Vimutti and Panya Vimutti. So if our heart is closed, if we are not aware and open, then we are not able to have the wisdom which is required to realize that there is unskillful qualities that are in our minds and in our hearts, and that we should let go of, that we should give up, and give up to such an extent that nothing remains. The same, of course, with hearing, with smelling, with tasting, with touching, and also with thinking. So these are the 6 senses that we know in Buddhism. The 5 senses we usually know about, but in Buddhism, the mind is the 6th sense. And now comes the beautiful simile to see how this all works. So suppose a person was to catch 6 animals with diverse territories and feeding grounds and tie them up with a strong rope. So this is basically the simile of a human being being reborn into this realm that we are in with 6 senses. And those 6 senses are all strung together by a strong rope. They would catch a snake, a crocodile, a bird, a dog, a jackal, and a monkey, and then tie them up with that strong rope and tie a knot in the middle and then let them loose. So all those animals are connected together with strings, and there's one big knot in the middle there. Then those 6 animals with diverse domains and territories would each pull towards their own domains and territories. And that's what we very often experience in this world if the mind is not calm. So the snake would pull one way, thinking, I'm going to the anthill, it says here. Next one is the crocodile. The crocodile will pull another way, thinking, I'm going into the water. Third animal is the bird. And the bird lives in the sky, so it would pull another way, thinking, I'm flying into the sky. So 3 animals gone. Next one, the dog would pull another way, thinking, I'm going into the village. Off it goes. Next one is the jackal, who pulls again in a different direction, going to the charnel ground. You get the idea here? Last one is the monkey mind is pulling another way, and it's going into the jungle. So that is very often our experience, and that is what happens if we are unrestrained. When those 6 animals become exhausted of pulling and trying to get away, they get worn out. And what happens then is the strongest of them gets their way, and they all have to submit to it. So one of those animals pulls into a certain direction at that point when they are exhausted, and they basically have control over the process. And that's what is happening with our 6 senses. In the same way, when a mendicant has not developed and cultivated mindfulness of the body, their eye pulls towards pleasant sides, but it's put off by unpleasant sides. The same with the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. They all want to go to pleasant things and avoid unpleasant things. So now, how can we solve this problem? And that is if we are restrained, if we are samvara. What does that mean in this sutta? So the mendicant here again sees something, but now he doesn't get hooked anymore. So if it's pleasant, they don't hold on to it. They renounce it. And if it's unpleasant, they don't dislike it either. So they also renounce the disliking. So the reactivity that is usually there, that is given up in this process. When we are mindful, so that means you live with mindfulness of the body established. And when you do that, then your mindfulness grows. With mindfulness, the power grows as well. And your heart, instead of being small, it becomes appamana cetaso. Appamana is the word for limitless. And for the people who know their suttas, appamana is always used also with the beautiful mind states, the metta, the karuna, the upekkha, and the mudita. So those beautiful qualities of the heart, of the open heart, of the limited heart, of the limitless heart, are those states when the heart is not weighed down and when mindfulness is present. So in terms of understanding afterwards, when the heart is open, when the mind is open, then we can understand the freedom of heart and the freedom of wisdom. Wisdom can't operate, wisdom can't arise when our minds and our hearts are small, when we are angry, when we are caught up and entangled in something. Then there just isn't enough space for mindfulness and wisdom to arise. And that's the problem there. But if mindfulness and wisdom is there, then the unskillful qualities are seen, and then they can be put down, given up, renounced. Same, of course, happens with sounds, odors, flavors, touches, and with thoughts. So touches like the sensations we have in our bodies. Fairly straightforward. So now, how does that look like with those animals now? So again, the animals are still there, they're caught. This is the human condition. So you can't just untie the knot. You have 6 senses, you have a body and a consciousness, and they're all bound up together in our existence. So cutting those ones is maybe possible further down the track, but for now we are stuck with this. So how do we manage those animals? Again, you have all those animals, they're all tied together, they're all tethered together, but now you tie them to a post or you tie them to a pillar. So there is something which is grounded, which stands its ground, which stays put, which doesn't get moved, and those animals get attached to that, or they, well, not attached to that, they get tethered to that. So you put them on the post, so to speak, like the dog that you leave outside the shop, and you tie them around a strong post or pillar. And it has to be a strong one, because otherwise finally you come out of the shop and you see the dog running around with whatever it is, the bicycle or the chair or whatever you have tethered that animal towards. So it has to be something which is really strong. Then those 6 animals with their diverse domains and territories would still each pull in their own domain and to their own territory. So the movement there from the animal's point of view is still the same. We are just not playing the game. We are standing our ground, and then it goes, the whole story goes, who is going where, so we don't have to repeat that. Now, but when those 6 animals become exhausted and worn out, they stand or sit or lie down right by that post or pillar. So in the past, when they got exhausted, it was one which took the lead and pulled them, dragged them all in a certain direction. But now, because mindfulness is established, because the heart is open and understanding, because renunciation has been applied in the right way, they calm down. So we calm down in meditation, we calm down in our day-to-day life, and then those animals do the same thing. The animals are, of course, our senses. In the same way, when a mendicant has developed and cultivated mindfulness of the body, the eye doesn't pull towards pleasant sights anymore, and it doesn't put off it isn't put off by unpleasant sights. Same with the ear, the nose, the tongue, and the body. They don't pull towards pleasant, and they don't push away from unpleasant thoughts. Okay, this is how someone is restrained. This is how we practice right effort. This is how we apply the mind in the right way. We apply the mind to the right object, but we also apply the mind with the right attitude, with the right mind, with the right heart. A strong post and pillar is a term for mindfulness of the body, and that's what we will be practicing in the guided meditation afterwards. So you should train like this. We will develop mindfulness of the body, we'll cultivate it, we'll make it our vehicle and our basis. Keep it up, consolidate it, and properly implement it. So this is now not just for the meditation, but we'll do a guided meditation together afterwards. But this is also for your day-to-day life. So try for the rest of our retreat now to see if you can cultivate, use the mindfulness of your body as a vehicle and as a basis. Keep it up during your day. Keep coming back to the sensations and to your body and consolidate and then implement this practice. And then you will notice that all this pulling and tearing and pushing that often happens in our day, the stronger the mindfulness becomes, the weaker those forces are. And there comes a point they actually calm down, and where we get peace of mind, and where those poor animals that are running in all directions get peace of mind as well. So that's how we should train. Basically, we understand reactivity and non-reactivity. And when I was thinking about this, this kind of took me back to my old school days when we had chemistry. So I guess most of you will be familiar with the periodic table here. And I don't want to, have too much school and worldly stuff here, but I thought it might be a good example to explain a little bit what is happening here. So there are certain elements. If we go right to the right of this periodic table, we see group number 18 over there, the ones in the light blue. Do you remember how they're called? Do you remember what they're about? Okay, I'll help you a little bit. They're called the noble gases. If you go to Wikipedia, it says the noble gases, historically also the inert gases, make up a class of chemical elements with very low chemical reactivity. The 6 naturally occurring noble gases are helium, neon, argon, krypton, xenon, and the radioactive radon. So why am I talking about this? Well, the properties of those noble gases can be well explained by modern theories of atomic structure. So you might be familiar with, how they draw it up, and they have the electrons on the outer layers. So their outer shell of valence electrons is considered to be full. They put full in parentheses there, which means they are either full or they are empty. So they have renounced their electrons in that sense. And because they have renounced those electrons, because they are complete, because they are content, if I might call an atom content, you see where I'm going with this, it is not reacting with other elements out there. So it's giving them little tendency to participate in chemical reactions. And I find it peculiar that those gases are called noble gases, because when we talk about the Dhamma, we sometimes talk about the noble being, that's the Aryas, the people who have already done some steps on this path to enlightenment, but you can also talk about a noble disciple. And the noble disciple is described as someone who lives in balance among people who are unbalanced, and who lives untroubled among people who are troubled. And that's from the Mahanama Sutta here in the Anguttara Nikaya 11, number 11. And that's what I used during the Noble Eightfold Path course as well. And that's what I wish that we can all cultivate during this day together, to have this balance, to be non-reactive to what is happening in the world. Okay, one last slide before we meditate together. The worldly objects out there and the 6 senses in meditation. So what we will be practicing in meditation together is we understand there are sights, smells, tastes, sounds, sensations, and thoughts. So these are the objects of the six senses. Now, in day-to-day life, it's a little bit more difficult, but when we meditate, we have a controlled environment to some degree, and then we can practice to renounce, we can practice to let go and to see how powerful that is and what the results are of those things. So in meditation, it's fairly easy. We can close our eyes, no sights. We can not really close our nose, but because there is no smells changing in the room, gradually they lose their importance. So the animal of the smell in our simile before, it's not running around and pulling around because there's nothing to do. There is nothing to smell. So it calms down. Same thing with the taste. We're not exciting our taste buds. The saliva in our mouth has the same taste all the time. So then slowly, the animal becomes calm and sits down, lies down, and starts to rest. So the first three, sight, smell, and taste, are fairly easy in a controlled environment. Now, what happens next? Once we have settled those ones, once we have brought our attention inwards, then we practice mindfulness of the body. So we turn to the sensations. And the sensations are the bridge in meditation. But also here, there is coarse sensations and there is subtle sensations. And as mindfulness grows, we are able to be with, settle on sensations that are more and more subtle and draw us, pull us into stillness and into peace, and help us to renounce and to let go. So in the beginning, it's the body of ours. We often do body sweeping that we will do together as well. And then as more and more absorption happens in this process, as more and more focus happens in this process, as we start to get the hang of renouncing and letting go and feeling the benefits, the happiness that arises with it, the deeper we go into this process. And the deeper we go, the less the sound disturbs us, the less the thoughts disturbs us. They are there. So sound is there. We can't control that. Thoughts are there as well. We can't really control the thoughts either. If we're trying to pull and push the animal of thought, it's not going to happen. So we stay with the sensation. We stay with our body. We calm down more and more. And then we establish ourselves in the present moment that way. We have this strong post that these things are tied to. There's only three left now: sound, sensation, and thoughts. And then if we do this properly, we will realize that slowly, sound and thoughts, sometimes one goes earlier, sometimes another one goes later. So it's a bit hard to know which one goes there. So I just faded them out together. Then we are just left with the sensation, and the sensations become more and more subtle. So if our mindfulness is strong enough, if our mind and heart is open and happy enough, then we will be able to settle on very, very subtle sensations, and that is the breath. So the breath becomes more and more subtle in this process of meditation. And there comes a point where even those sensations, which still have a little bit to do with like the body and the world, start to fade away. And what are we left? What happens then? That's sometimes what people are confused about. They're like, okay, the objects of the world have now calmed down. The objects of the world are not present anymore. So what are we aware of? We are aware of our mind. The sixth sense is still there, but the mind is now not aware of any worldly objects as usual out there. They have all calmed down. So the objects that we start to become aware of are the objects of the mind. And they still have a sensation that comes with them. They still have sometimes some visuals that come with them, but they are not worldly anymore. We are now in the world of the mind. And these things at these stages usually become so strong and so happy that they pull us in the right direction all by themselves. But if that is not the case, then we have to make sure that our foundation that we are lying in this process is very solid. So what I've just taken you through here in the last 5 minutes or so is something that has to be done very carefully and without rushing and without, expecting and leaning forwards or backwards, staying put, staying grounded even there, and then it will all happen by itself. Okay, anyway, I'll leave you with that for now as a little description and a little introduction. And let's now go to the meditation together. I have to find the stop button here. Yes, okay, I'm back. Well, I'm actually not back. It's all dark. Where am I? Right, yes. It's not there. Okay, so I hope that has given you some explanations and inspirations, and now is the time for us to meditate together. For the people who are not used to this format, so it is more like a meditation intro that I'm doing here. So I will actually lead you into the meditation for maybe 10, 15 minutes, and then I just let you meditate. So I'm not going to ring any gongs or bells. I have one ready here if you can hear it, but I will just lead you, guide you into the meditation, and then off you go. Please switch off your computer, meditate by yourself, or if you wish, you can switch to the digital meditation hall if you're not tired yet, if it's not late in your time zone, and then you can meditate with the people there. Okay, let's get comfortable if you are not comfortable already, and turn towards practicing now. Not just hearing the teachings, but actually experiencing the teachings, trying out how this renunciation business works. So first thing, get your body comfortable and close your eyes. Wiggle your toes, your hands. If there is some scratching or adjusting that needs to be done. If you want to, dim your lights, I don't really have that luxury here in our studio. So you feel comfortable, you'll feel at ease. You feel safe. And take a few deep breaths in the beginning here to signal to your body and to your mind that now it's time to calm down. Now it's time to rest. Not to go asleep, but to let go of the world and to allow the mental world to take over, or to venture into the mental world, which is actually always there. So as I said, the sight, the smell and the taste They're easy at this point. There's no food for them. So they will die down by themselves. And we turn our attention to the body. And to the sensations in our bodies. Try not to think about your body, but just feel your body. How do you know that you have a body? What is the prominent sensation in your body? And where is it to be found? See if you can rest your awareness on the sensations in the present moment. Most importantly, please don't force your mind. Whatever arises, don't get dragged around by it, carried away around by it. And also don't push it away. See if you can be non-reactive. And the best way of being non-reactive is actually to be kind. When you are kind, when you are contented, when you have goodwill, you don't interfere. You just look on. With a kind, warm, open heart, open mind, wishing your body well. And then see if you can find the spots in your body that are not completely at ease. And send them kindness. That way you establish mindfulness, but you also widen and soften your mind. There's a physical reaction you will get from that. Your body starts to be more and more relaxed and at ease. Spend a bit of time with your face, gently putting your attention on your face. And as you look on with kindness, with compassion, with non-reactivity and non-interference, everything softens in your face, around your eyes and your mouth. Around your neck and your shoulders. It's like giving yourself a gentle mental massage. With the vibes of kindness, presence, goodwill. Shoulders and arms, all the way down to the hands. Let them rest. Let them be awake, but at ease. present and pleasantly relaxed. And then your whole torso in the front and at the back, with the spine and all the organs that often get tense from running around. Send your kindness and your mindfulness there. Spread warmth, kindness, and goodwill. Letting things settle and rest. All the way down to the hips. Feel your buttocks on the chair or on the cushion or the mat. Relaxed. And then we carry on all the way down our thighs, not forgetting the knees, all the way down to our feet and our toes. Again, we're not thinking about them, we are being with them. Checking in with them, sending our vibes of goodwill. Caring for them. When did you care the last time for your feet? When did you wish them well? Just letting them be as they are. And when you give mindfulness to the sensations in your body, when you rest your mind there, you're kind and open mind, you establish yourself in the present. See if you can hang out with the sensations in your body, and the relaxation and joy that arise for a bit longer in this meditation. So I invite you, if you wish, to do another sweep of the body from the top of the head to your toes, slowly, bit by bit, at your own pace. Or if the body is so comfortable and cozy already that it's fading into the background, you can start to explore the mental world. Or if your breath is present, you can hang out with your breath for a bit longer, establishing mindfulness of the sensations, renouncing the world and opening, brightening and shining up your mind. Enjoy the rest of your meditation, and I'll see you again tomorrow morning when it's morning here in Western Australia. Take care, be well, and if you want to sleep afterwards, have a peaceful, deep sleep, good rest to be ready